I'll just say welcome and acknowledge that the BC Touring Council office is on the traditional territories of the Sinixt, Ktunaxa, and Syilx people, and home to the Métis and many individual Indigenous people. And we're very happy for their stewardship of land and water over millennia. And I am here in what we now call Nelson and the Kootenay region in the southeast portion of BC. So welcome everyone. Thrilled to have Brianna back as part of the 4-part series. This is her second one on content. The last one will be next week, back with Inga Petrie of Strategic Moves. And I think it's appropriate to say that this is a project that has been funded through the Canada Council for the Arts. And so welcome, and really look forward to Brianna's dynamic presentation again today. So take it away, Brianna.
Oh, thanks so much, Joanna. So I think many of you, maybe most of you, were with me last week. For anybody who's just joining for the first time, just to let you know, I really prefer a very conversational approach for these kinds of things. So that's to say, if you have questions or comments, and especially if you've got kind of a personal anecdote to share about anything that you've experienced that's relating to what I'm talking about today, please feel free to raise your hand or type a note in the chat, or even just unmute yourself and jump into the conversation. I always feel like, if anybody has a question or a comment to share, it's very likely that it's going to be something that other people who are here also, are wondering about or would like to know. So I'm just going to share my screen. I'm going to go back and forth with my PowerPoint because I don't want to bore you all with just my PowerPoint, but I will start off just at the beginning to give you a sense of, what we're covering today. Oops. So I'm speaking to you today from Hudson, Quebec, which is the traditional and unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka, which is the Mohawk people. And it's been a place that has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among nations. I am also a former Vancouverite. I moved here about 5 years ago. So it's been a lot of fun to take a look at everybody's websites and, and hear about the different places around BC where everybody is from. So just a reminder that there are more workshops where this one came from, and you can find them all on digitalartsnation.ca. There's also how-to tutorials and digital playbook, lots of useful resources for anybody who's interested in these kinds of topics. So in today's presentation, we're going to cover some tips, tools, and techniques to create engaging content. We're going to talk a bit about how to improve your content creation process and also how to improve your ROI on social media. So ROI, of course, is return on investment, which is something that a lot of people really have questions about. I'm only going to touch lightly on that aspect in this presentation because next week, Inga will be here with you, and she's going to go into a bit of a deeper dive about analytics and, and how you can define success metrics that matter for your organization. So we're going to start about talking about the content creation side. Some of these slides are a little bit wordy, and I'm only going to skim over them because I'm going to be talking through most of the content. I've created them that way so that they're there for you as a reference in case you need, because this presentation will be emailed out afterwards. So to begin with, I'd like everybody to kind of tell me a little bit about what you find engaging about social media content. So if you could help me out, if you can type in the chat the name of the last social network that you visited and what type of content you were looking for or what kind of qualities you were hoping that content would have. So a little bit about what you like to see and discover on social media and which platforms you've used recently. Don't really use social media. You know what? That's something I'm hearing from many people these days as well, like there is a bit of a backlash too. And I think there's also a caution from people about, getting too deep into social media. I think that, it's not a bad thing to edit which platforms you choose to participate on and how deep you go into that, because it really can be overwhelming, and and it can easily start taking up more of your time than you actually want. It is sometimes hard to strike that balance. But when you're in the position of trying to use social media to promote your content as an organization so that you can connect with those people who are using social media, it can be really difficult if you don't have personal experience. So it's maybe not a bad idea, if your organization is using certain platforms, even if you're not a huge social media user, to spend a little bit of time, at least on those platforms as a user, just to find out more about it. So this is great. So we're getting in some more comments. So Reddit, that's interesting. Looking for ways to promote this theater company. We're not going to touch on Reddit here, but it's a good reminder that there's more to the social media world than sort of the big platforms. The Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and emerging platforms like TikTok. So Facebook, looking for interesting, informative, beautiful photos and text. Lots of interesting and inspiring words that come up. Informative too. Yeah, brief. Eileen, yeah, you're right. Sometimes things that are too wordy are a bit of a turn off for people. Instagram, looking at what their friends are posting. Cute pet photos. Can't go wrong with cute pet photos. And Facebook, Instagram. Okay, great. Yeah, so you can see some common threads in there. There's a lot of Facebook and Instagram use. There's a lot of looking for stories, looking for pretty things, looking for content that friends are sharing that help you to connect with people that or with things that that you care about. And as we talked about in our last presentation, that's exactly what you can expect users will be looking for when they come. And so that's a piece of what needs to be guiding you as you're creating your content. Has anybody spent any time on TikTok here? If you can just type a 1 in the chat if TikTok is a platform that you've explored. I'm hearing a lot of interest from people about it, but it's something that not everybody has explored. Okay, so a few people here. Cheryl, it's your favorite. Yeah, it's a really fun platform, very dynamic. Yeah, viewing only. That's really common. I think one of the amazing things that's happened with social media is that it, platforms like Facebook and Instagram have got people actually contributing content to it. Very, like a lot of people. It used to be that the rule of thumb was it's kind of 80% of the people that were on social media at any given time were just viewing content and not actually contributing anything, and 20% might share or contribute occasionally, and only 1% were the actual active content creators. And those ratios have changed over time as the platforms have become better at encouraging us to share and giving us feedback that makes us feel rewarded for sharing. So you might remember from last week, I talked about the 3 C's of content development. And I just wanted to remind you about it here, because I think sometimes when we're looking at creating content for social media, it's really easy to get overwhelmed or to feel a bit of writer's block. What should I say anyway? How will I know? How will I have the time even to produce it? And it's just a reminder that you don't actually have to create everything yourself. Yes, creation is certainly one of the pillars, and it should be a sizable proportion of what you're sharing on social media, but you can also curate content that other people have created that will be relevant to your audience. And you can also build in conversation, and that becomes a part of your stream of content. So things like asking questions, participating in threaded conversations using hashtags on platforms like Twitter, for example. And even things like, broadcasting an interview over Zoom with an artist or a person of interest. So we're going to talk about some of the different kinds of content that you can share over social media. These are kind of the big four. I'm going to really focus on three of them in this presentation because the audio side is something that's still quite niche. I just wanted to mention it here because it is something that I see as growing and share. And when I'm talking about audio, I'm specifically thinking about podcasting. It's something that's becoming more mainstream. People you know, are increasingly looking for new podcasts and they're quite interested in it. And a lot of organizations have had good success with that, especially during the pandemic. And as we'll touch on a little bit later, there are some advantages to incorporating podcasting into your content creation process if one of the things you want to do is have long form content as well. So we're going to go through each of these things, except for the audio part, and talk a little bit about some of the options you have for creating content using, these kinds of media, and some tips and tricks to try to do it better. So we're going to start with photos. Photos are some of the easiest kind of ways to contribute content. These days, if you've got an iPhone, you've got an incredibly powerful camera, or any smartphone these days. And, and then tools like Canva also make it very, very easy to create powerful visual images. So I've just included a couple of examples here, one from Instagram here and one from Facebook, but even Twitter, which used to be more of a text-based medium, these days, a lot more people are sharing photos as well. So when you're sharing photos, what you're looking for is something that has energy and a dynamism to it. Ideally, you're looking at something that stands out in the feed, something that's beautiful and inspiring, that grabs the attention, and then that can get people to actually look at your text content. So here's one of my wordy slides I mentioned. You're looking at when it comes to photography and visual content in general, you want to pay attention to the composition, to the quality, and to the content itself. So those three elements are the three things that you're thinking about, or that you should be thinking about when you're trying to develop, your kind of library of images to use on social media. So some of the things like to do with composition, it goes right back to really classic, art rules of thumb, things like the rule of thirds, which is to say that when you're positioning things, in the frame, try to position it, if you imagine that that it was divided into three equal parts, if you try to line things up so that it falls into one of the thirds instead of dead straight on in the middle, it just creates a more dynamic photo. And that's the same, vertically and horizontally as well. Looking for things like symmetry and repeating patterns, or an unusual point of view or perspective, also makes it really interesting. And for anybody who's been playing around with Instagram, you know that there's many filters that you can use, including things like there's a depth of field kind of filter that allows you to put the focus on something in the shot, and it kind of blurs everything around it. So it's just little tips like that can make your photos look a little more interesting and dynamic. In general, there's things as well, like making sure your photos aren't shaky, trying to take advantage of whatever features your camera has, making sure you're cropping and not zooming so that the photo has a really good resolution. And then, the content itself, taking candid images, making sure that they're current and timely, and not overthinking it too. I mean, although it would be ideal if everything was a glossy, beautiful photo, people actually do also value on social media and Instagram especially that sense that like you just took this photo now and you're sharing it, and it's not necessarily dressed up, but it tells a story about what's happening behind the scenes. It kind of gives them a little peek behind the curtain. And just a note in there that if you're taking pictures that involve visual art pieces, just be careful that you're not taking it in a way that photo could be, basically stolen online. So one trick that I've seen people use is they'll position the photo so that maybe there's a person in front of the artwork, or they'll take it from far enough back that the resolution wouldn't be high enough to be able to be copied. So video is something that's becoming increasingly popular on all platforms. So if you're not producing video, it's really one set of skills that would be worth developing. And I've included in here an example of something that a member of the New York Philharmonic Orchestra produced. She made it for TikTok. And we mentioned before, TikTok's a super fun, playful platform. I think I mentioned this one last week as well with Peter and the Wolf. And I think I can bring it up for you now so that you can watch it. But what's interesting is that, you can take your video for TikTok, or you can take it for Instagram or for Facebook, and then share it everywhere. And even if the aspect ratio is not ideal for the platform, if the content is compelling, people will respond. And that's exactly what happened to this Peter and the Wolf one here. So I'm just going to actually switch my share here so that I can show you this video, because it's really worth seeing. Okay. All right, so we're going to watch this one. I'm getting all my notifications on Facebook. Okay, here we go.
Peter and the Wolf in under a minute. Go! Early one morning, Peter opened the gate and went into the meadow. He met his friend the bird. A duck came along. And a cat. Peter's grandfather stood by the gate looking angry. Suppose a wolf came out of the forest. Then what would you do? Peter wasn't afraid. But grandfather pulled Peter back inside the gate. Just then, a big gray wolf did come out of the forest. The bird flew up into the tree. The cat scampered up too. In her excitement, the duck jumped out of the pond. The wolf got nearer and nearer. He got her and swallowed her in one gulp. Now the wolf saw the bird and the cat in the tree. Peter had been watching the whole thing. He got a rope, climbed the tree, made a lasso, and let it down. He caught the wolf by the tail. The wolf was mad. Just then, some hunters came along, shooting their guns. Peter said, "Don't shoot, let's have a parade." And they did. Listen, the wolf had swallowed her alive. The end.
So just kind of stopping from there, I'd like to have a little bit of a conversation about it. What are some of the things you notice about that video? Why do you think that it got such great engagement from people?
Humor.
Humor, yeah, definitely.
It was a familiar song. People recognize the tune.
Yes, and that's definitely one trick that that you can use. If you start with something that people think they know, and then you give it just that little twist, then that can make people really grab onto it. It's easier to do that than if you're introducing something totally brand new. You've got that exactly right.
And there was a cat.
And there was a cat. That's right. Cats always win the internet.
It was.
What was that, Janet?
It was really fast.
It was really fast. That's right. And that was originally made for TikTok, which is a very playful, fun kind of platform. And so it was a great fit for that. But as you can see, it works just as well on Facebook. It got just as great a response, on these other platforms. And so that's one of the fun things is, you can use the editing features, for example, on TikTok and create something fun and playful, test it on that platform. And then if it works there, see if it also works on whatever your main channel is. And as we'll kind of talk about later, that idea to be kind of cross-pollinating across your different social channels is one of the things you can do to be able to have a steady stream of content and present things in fresh and interesting ways, using the different strengths of each platform as well. Oops, I clicked the wrong thing here. Okay. So, another kind of style of video that that is becoming more and more popular is the live video. And I'm just going to share my screen again here. And I included this example from Massey Theatre for two reasons. It's also, in addition to the sense that the conversational video, which is become a lot more popular during the pandemic, it's also an example of curation. Remember, back to our 3 Cs. So Massey Theatre didn't actually host this. It wasn't a part of it exactly, but it was supporting another organization that is within the network and that is relevant to the audience there. So in the Zoom style conversations, these informal live videos that you can do. So there's the Zoom conversations. There's also just holding up your phone and speaking into it, or recording from your computer as well. It's expected that you're going to be conversational, unscripted. Viewers are pretty forgiving if the quality is a little uneven or if there are some technical hiccups. And the power of the live video is actually different than something pre-recorded. And in many ways, like, the messiness helps to really reinforce that this is in fact a live event. This was not pre-recorded, and that can create a different kind of energy, to a broadcast versus something that is a little more scripted and a little more polished. That said, there is also the option to premiere videos instead of broadcasting truly live. And that can be useful when, for example, you have time constraints. Maybe, you're not able to actually go live at the time that you want to, so you want to pre-record it. Or, if it's your first time out doing these kinds of videos and you just want to have that safety of wanting to be able to watch it and review it before you put it out there in the world. So this is, me taking my own medicine here. These are two examples of some live videos that I did with my duo, Go to Starling. The first one was a performance that we performed live, but recorded and then premiered on Facebook because it was our first time doing it. And again, time constraints. And it was our first time. And so we were trying to figure out how to make the sound work, and, we couldn't get the lighting right. And, where we chose to set up wasn't super great. That's the one on the left on my couch there. And then the next time that we produced a video, we cleaned up a lot of those things. I got a better quality external mic for my phone so that the audio quality was better. I got a ring light, which improved the visuals quite a bit. We made a point of setting up in a space where the background looked good. And so incrementally over time, the quality of our videos are getting better. But what's interesting is that, the quality of the video isn't necessarily going to be what determines the connection with the audience. I might think that the video with the Christmas tree, we were doing a cover of a Song for a Winter's Night in that one, I think that sounded better, it looked better, it was a better quality video. But the video on the left, which was a cover of Big Star's 13, that's the song, actually ended up having this weird second viral life, and suddenly people started sharing it in Brazil, and we ended up getting a whole bunch of likes and shares because I guess the song and the performance connected with people. So the moral of this story is, don't hold yourself back from trying and putting it out there until you have the perfect gear. Start with what you have, do your best, learn from what you did, and just try to get incrementally better over time, because you never know what's going to connect with your audience. Incidentally, we did our first actual live stream last Sunday, and that was a whole other thing. As it turned out, there were compatibility issues with my external mic that I bought for the phone and the streaming service that we were using. It was StreamYard, and so we had to come up with a whole new setup, download a whole bunch of other software. It was hectic trying to do all this like the morning of the show, but it was worth it. And we knew to do things like test the setup and the interface, and make sure that we did a sound check, and that's how we discovered that it was not going to work how we thought it was going to work. And that let us put on a show that was a really great show, and we knew to do things like set up the background and use the ring lights and all of that stuff. So again, we ended up being able to produce a much better video than we would have if we had held back from putting ourselves out there earlier on. So there's lots of options for video on Facebook and TikTok. It's pretty straightforward. There's the videos that come through in the feed, and then on Facebook, you have your Facebook stories where you can put stuff up as well. On Instagram, it's more complicated. There's actually 4 kinds of video, and so depending on what kind of video you're producing, you kind of need to choose which one's going to be the most appropriate for you. So the videos that come through your feed could be up to 60 seconds long, and they can be in 3 different aspect ratios, depending on how you shot the video. The stories videos are only 15 seconds or less, and they have to be vertical, and those disappear after 24 hours. You can also do live videos, which can be up to an hour, and then there's also IGTV, which is something different again. So if you're doing a deep dive into video, and if Instagram is your platform, it's a good idea to familiarize yourself with all these formats, and decide what's going to be the most appropriate for the kind of content you want to produce. So again, back to some of the skills and tips when you are choosing to make video a cornerstone of your content creation process. Just like with photography, you want to look at composition, you want to look at quality, but the most important thing is to look at content, and I'd add also context. Just as I mentioned with the photography section, a video that tells a really compelling story, or that is fun or informative or surprising or beautiful, any of those very emotive things, that's going to do really well, even if the video quality isn't absolutely perfect, or if your lighting isn't, amazing. But it's never hurts to do your best to try to take the better quality video, and some simple things can help you do that. Paying attention to the microphones, the built-in mics that are in your phone, or whatever it is that you're using to capture video, are pretty good, but they're not great for things like music, for example. And so it's worth investing in an external microphone if you know that you're going to do that, or working out a setup that uses a mixer and all of that if you're getting really serious about audio quality. There are some simple things too, like if you don't have a ring light, just choosing where you're going to shoot your video. Take advantage of natural areas where you've got sunlight, or where you've got a naturally interesting background, so that your video looks more appealing. Any questions so far before I get in to the next piece here? Oh, and sorry, Eileen, you asked any insight between IG video and Reels. I think the main, so Reels, many people find that those are really popular. It really works for them. I haven't personally delved that much into Reels. It's just not been something that I have felt motivated to do. And I'm a real believer that you don't need to do absolutely everything. So I'd say that if you are curious about it, it's definitely worth exploring. If you have some fun short videos that you would like to produce and share, or if you're already producing videos for TikTok, you might as well share them across both. A lot of people find on Reels too, just a very simple video, like, really just holding the phone and as a selfie and just talking into the phone works really, really well. It's very relatable, and people do like seeing the face behind the organization. They like feeling that personal sense of connection with you. So if that's something that you want to do, definitely go down that path. It can help a lot for exposure on Instagram, to use that feature for sure. And it's, and I think it's just that reminder too, that it's you don't have to worry about having everything professionally produced and scripted and storyboarded and all of that stuff. One of the nice things about Reels is that they do disappear, so you can be a little bit imperfect, and you can talk about things that won't be relevant 2 weeks from now, because of that fact that things are more ephemeral.
I didn't realize they disappeared, so thank you for that. I thought that was only stories, but Reels too. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and so when it comes to the visual stuff, just to kind of get back to it, the status updates, you know, in the past with social networks, you know, you might have just typed in text for things, and increasingly, if you do that, it's not going to get seen. So you do want to try to use either photos or videos as much as possible, to try to draw attention to it. What I've shown here is some examples of overlaying text with the photos, just to make it stand out a little bit more in the feed. And that's something that is especially relevant on Instagram, but it, again, it works across the platforms too. You know, it just helps to draw people's attention to it, and then they'll read the details either in the status update or at the link that you share. And you know, one aspect to do with text, you know, the text is still relevant, even though it is increasingly a visual social media world. You know, to use other people's words. So in this case, these are some examples from the theater world. You can see in the example on the left, they've taken a shot from the production, and they've just taken a line from the script and overlaid it, so that you get a bit of a taste of what's happening there. It's just very simple, but it works. And then on the example on the right, they've just screenshotted people's comments about the show and put that onto one of the production shots. And again, it's a very powerful way to show that people like the show, and what is it that they like about the show. You can also use templates if you're sharing more text-oriented content. So this is an example from the National Gallery of Canada. You can see that, and they do this over and over again. It gives them a way to, you know, share a bit about a piece from the collection, and then share a bit of the story behind the collection. And it's also presented in a way that, you know, limits things like resharing of content in unauthorized ways, because the size of it is not, you know, too big, and it's not a very high resolution. So when it comes to writing, you know, in many ways, because you know, the trend is to writing shorter on social media, it actually makes it more important to think very carefully about the words you're using. You know, you want to define and hone your voice. You know, be casual and conversational, but you have to be very deliberate, because if you've only got a few words to be able to communicate your message, you want to make sure that those are real power words, and that they're communicating the most important thing. You kind of have to edit yourself down to one clear idea, and use the visuals that you're pairing that text with to help communicate the story, instead of just using the text. There is still room in this world for long form content. You know, that typically should live on your website, where it can also offer some search engine optimization value. So, you know, share the little teaser clip or the short form on social media, and then give people the link to go and get the full meal on your website if you've got something more substantive to say. You know, and remember to have fun, and keep it very social and casual. You know, you don't want everything that you share to be about a call to action to buy. You want to have a lot of the content you're sharing to be things that are relatable and that map to people's interests in your audience. So it sounds like a lot to produce, and it can be, but the good news is that you don't have to do it all. You know, if you take a little bit of time to step back and plan and prioritize, you can decide which of these kinds of content are the ones that you're going to invest in, and that you think that you are going to have the best luck with. You know, if you try to do absolutely everything, then you're not going to get as far as if you focus on one thing and do it really, really, really well. So, you know, that's one of the big tips for the content creation process. And you're going to be listening, creating, sharing, and repurposing. So, I'd like to just take a pause and have a little chat again about your current process and the tools you're currently using for content creation, and any recommendations or advice you might have for others. Does anybody, you know, want to either unmute yourself or share in the chat to talk about what you're currently doing, and maybe where you're struggling or what's working for you that you'd recommend to others?
This is going to sound negative. It doesn't mean to be, but just a reminder that your ideas are the most important thing, because nobody is going to use your specific ideas. But everybody online, every major corporation that wants to sell on social media, have video departments, scripting departments, they can afford to shoot professionally done. So it doesn't matter how way out your idea is, it's important that you are creative, but make it look as good as you possibly can.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it is, it can be challenging as a small organization to be able to invest the time for content creation. But you know, but I think that again, like creativity is really that that secret sauce, right? And that's something that if you if you can play with what you have and play to your strengths, that gives you a territory you can explore. And so you don't necessarily want to compare yourselves to what the big corporations are doing. You know, really, you want to just focus on creating content that you know will connect with your audience. Any other comments on what's working for you or what platforms you're using? Like, does anybody use, for example, a social media management platform or a content calendar system?
Hi.
Hi.
So we have a series of videos that we host on Vimeo, and it's been kind of an area that do you have any opinions about publishing? Like, 'cause we do have a lot of content right now that we're trying to get just more known, and there's the idea of publishing straight from video to our socials, like straight to either like our Twitter or Facebook. There's some hesitancy though, that there's the fear that it won't drive people to our website, that it'll just will increase, like who cares if we have a bunch more Facebook followers, if it's like, do you have any, what would you say to that?
I think it depends on what your ultimate goal is. If the goal is to get those videos seen, the best thing to do is to put them in the native format on each social platform. You know, the algorithms tend to favor, for example, on Facebook, if you upload a video within Facebook, it's more likely to be shown in people's news feeds than if you share the link to YouTube or to Vimeo. But if reach isn't your primary goal, then, you know, and it's more important to drive people to your website, what you might do is create teaser videos that you might share on social, and then include in the text and the caption, you know, see the full thing here, or this is an example of the videos we have on this topic, you know, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be kind of my first inclination.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And Eileen, I'm backtracking in my head and I'm realizing I had a brain fart. You're right, reels don't disappear. It's the stories that disappear. There's so many different kinds of videos on Instagram, and I just kind of had a deer in the headlights moment there. I was like, I forgot what I'm saying. So thank you for that and for bringing that up as well. Okay, so we've got, sorry, go ahead.
When I create my stuff, I always use a photo because I think people aren't going to pay attention if it's just words. I try to really limit myself to one thought, and I think about my words really carefully. I often ask a question or include a link, and I get a lot of reaches, but I don't get a lot of engagements.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not totally sure what to do about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely doing the right thing by including the photo and by asking questions. What I found is, you know, it can take a little while to kind of warm up your audience. They need to have practice and proof over time that it's that they will be rewarded for participating and for talking back to you. So some of the things that have worked for me in the past are starting with things that are super, super simple to answer, like don't make the questions complicated. So things like fill in the blanks. Or on Instagram, people will ask questions and they'll say, you know, post an emoji, you know, post a, you know, a sunshine if you think this is better, and post you know, a beach ball if you think that's better. So it gives people a way to answer without having to think. And really, like, that's what you want to do, is you want to make it so so easy for them to participate and fun for them to participate, that it, that gives them a little bit of a reward. And if you do that regularly enough, then it kind of warms them up for engaging a little bit more profoundly with you over time.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And okay, so Erin, you mentioned that you're testing a few social media management platforms. So you're trying Sprout out right now. Jane, you're using Hootsuite and Later. Do you guys want to unmute yourself? Maybe Erin, do you want to go first and just do a quick run through of which platforms you've tried and kind of what your quick opinion is so far on them?
So we've tried Hootsuite and we like Hootsuite as well. But yeah, same thing about Instagram. And I don't love their analytics. Sprout, so far I've been liking, but I'm not thrilled on the interface. So I'm kind of wrestling with the interface because we used Hootsuite for quite a while. So I wanted to try something new.
Yeah.
Yeah, just looking for any advice, feedback, what people are using, what they're loving.
Yeah. Jane, do you want to unmute and tell us a little bit about Later?
Yeah, I just started to get frustrated the more I started posting different types of content on Instagram. The fact that it was quite limited in trying to post stories or carousel posts and things like that. And I couldn't really get to grips with how it asked you to post things. So I just, I started looking for something else, and I'm just experimenting with Later at the moment.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of reluctant. I don't want to start having, there are multiple social media platforms to manage, and I don't want to have to manage social media management platforms. I want to find one that does everything. And I really enjoyed using Hootsuite for a long time. But it's just not kind of working in terms of the type of posting I want to do right now. So.
Yeah, it's definitely the tricky thing. Instagram has been the one that's been the most difficult, I think, to find good posting. But yeah, that was when I looked at Later. This was some time ago, and they might have changed some things about it. But that was why I hesitated, because the pages that I was managing, Facebook is really important for those pages, and that actually was like the core social media channel that was driving the business results for me. So whatever platform I picked had to do Facebook really well. And Instagram, I didn't have as complicated a need for that. So I went through kind of the same thing as well. I think the selection of the social media management tool, like, it has so much to do with which platform is your top one, because for different organizations it's different, right? Some people are Instagram first, some people are Facebook first, some people are Twitter first, and then there's that second part, like Erin mentioned, about just your comfort with the interface. It is not worth it to struggle with an interface that you just don't like, or does not make sense to you, because there's so many options for social media tools out there. So you might as well keep looking until you find one that works. Right now, the one I'm using is Agorapulse, which is I find it a little bit expensive, but what I like about it is the way that it manages the scheduling, and I like the insights that it gives me in terms of the analytics. It works for my brain, and so that's why I'm using it. But I still haven't found the perfect social media tool either. Has anybody here found a tool that they really love? Looks like the quest is continuing then. For those who don't know, the social media management tools are really handy, and they're handy for a couple of reasons. One is that it lets you, create your content all at once in a big batch and then schedule it out over time. And that makes it much more efficient to work, versus trying to post things ad hoc all the time. It also consolidates all of the notifications from the various platforms into one interface. So you can quickly check and see all of the replies and messages and all of that from the different platforms that you're active on. And then they also have a different way of showing you the analytics, how your content is performing, and in many cases the kinds of charts and graphs that they're producing. It's often easier to read, and it gives you kind of a different understanding of how your content is performing. So for all those reasons, it's a really great idea to look into using one of them, you know, if you are managing multiple platforms, and especially if you don't have a lot of time to do it. Oh, yes, and the management suite that I use is Agora Pulse. I just had a question about that. Yeah, that's the one I'm currently trying. Like I said, it's I don't know if it's my final yet, but I'm liking it so far. And I can type that in the chat here. Hold on. It's this one. Yeah. So I'm gonna switch over again to share my screen here. So I always say play to your strengths. You want to focus your attention so that you can do something really well, as opposed to spreading yourself too thin and feeling kind of lost, you know, among many platforms and many kinds of content and all of that stuff. You know, I think unless your full-time role is in social media, it's very difficult to keep up on top of everything that's going on in all of the platforms that you could possibly be active in. So, you know, think strategically about the few things you know you can deliver. You know, can you take really great photos, or do you have somebody who can take them for you, or do you already have a library of great photos? Then definitely, you know, go photo forward. You know, are you willing to, or do you have the resources to invest in video? Okay, great, do that. Whatever it is that you do well, just double down on it. And then, you know, you can do other things in kind of like a secondary way. Collaborate also, and that's another way to produce more when you don't have very many resources. You know, that could mean asking staff and volunteers to help you generate content by taking photos and videos, for example. Or it can even mean inviting your audience or your customers or your supporters to do the same. And they can do that by participating in a hashtag challenge. It can be a formal request, you know, share your photos. You can also kind of indirectly reward people who are already doing this by reaching out to them and asking if you can reshare their photos. Most people are very flattered by that, and taking that time to personally reach out and send them a direct message usually makes people feel very welcome, and you know, and like you notice them and care about them. And as Steve had brought up, you know, really zeroing in on what works for your audience, and don't worry too much about what other people are doing. You know, if you've got something that is working for you, do more of that. Pay attention to your analytics and the performance, and, you know, and use that to guide your choices on where you're going to invest your time. So one of this is about some ways to kind of overcome the writer's block that happens. You know, it's so frustrating when you get, you know that you need to update your social media and you just can't think of anything to share. And planning ahead is one way that you can avoid that. So one tactic that many people use is the idea of defining content pillars. So those are basically like kind of like buckets or groups of content, like themes that you're going to regularly return to. And so that could be, for example, if you, you know, have a performing arts organization, you know, one could be one of those, you know, content pillars can, of course, be current performances, could be past performances, it could be alumni. You know, I've seen organizations sometimes post about people who have performed before. And when they've got news, like they've got a new album out, for example, you know, just reminding so-and-so performed here in June and she's got a new album out and it's amazing, you know, things like this. It could be also things that connect with values that your organization has, or it could be about your community or the broader community, whatever it is that kind of makes up your personal, you know, your organization's kind of personal map of who you are and what you represent and what your audience sees you stand for. And if you write those down, then you can start to brainstorm ideas under each of those pillars and just store them in a file. You know, go once a month and do your big brainstorm with your staff and volunteers, you know, note it down. And then when you're stuck, you have something to come back to. And then there's some other ways that you can come up with ideas too, checking your analytics to see what did well before, and then think of ways that you can, build on what you did, either like repeating the same type of content or revisiting the idea or the theme. Looking at trending topics on Google Trends or in hashtags, and asking your audience, if you get a lot of questions about the same things, turn those into posts as well. And those you can actually recycle as well. If you know that you get the same kinds of questions over and over, because so few people see every single post that comes through, that there's going to be members of your audience that will see it as if for the first time, even if you're sharing it again. And another thing that helps is to think about how you can repurpose or remix your content. So as much as possible, like if you've got one long video, can you take a screen cap of the video and share it as an image and use it as a teaser to say that, we're going to be launching this video? Could you recut it so that you take a 5 to 15 second highlight and share that separately from the main video? Maybe the video was created in a live broadcast first, and then you're going to upload it and share it, and for archive purposes later. Maybe there are quotes from, let's say, an artist interview that you do that's a video, but they say something really profound. So take that little nugget of what they said and put it into Canva in text and make a little quote box, and give them the credit to kind of send that idea a little further. You can also do things like, if you've got a lot of photos, you can make it into a slideshow video. So those are some of the ways that you can make the most of the content you have and just share it all the possible ways that you can. I showed some examples earlier about paying attention to what your fans are doing too, and and with their consent, screen cap their reviews, share their content, and give them a bit of a hat tip when you do. And then, as we showed earlier too, sharing content across platforms. So something you made for TikTok can easily be shared to Facebook, for example. And when I had mentioned audio at the very beginning of the presentation, if you are doing long form content, for example, having a blog on your website, a podcast pairs really well with that, because one strategy you could use is when you record the podcast, you can do it over Zoom, for example. That will give you video clips that you can use. It will give you the audio file you can share as a podcast. You can put it into a tool like otter.ai, and that will give you a transcript that you can clean up and turn into a blog post that you can share. And then you can do all of these other things that I mentioned as well, with sharing quotes and all of that. So, if you're doing interviews anyways as a part of your content development, it's something to consider, because it can be quite powerful. So another thing that really helps for consistency is to create and use a brand kit and a style guide. And that might sound like a little corporate and maybe even a little scary, but really what I'm talking about is making a cheat sheet for yourself so that it's really easy and you have everything to hand. If you're using Canva Pro, it has that as one of the features, where you can define the color codes for your brand and the fonts that you use, and and have a folder that has all of your logos so that you can easily put that into the images that you're creating. But even if you don't have Canva Pro, you can just create a Word doc or a Google Doc that just has all of those things for reference so that you're not always searching for it. Have a library of templates. As you go, and let's say you have fans sharing photos on Instagram, you might not have time to reshare them right then, but you can screen cap them and throw them in a folder on your desktop. And then, on a day when you're doing batch creation, you can upload all of those and schedule them using a social media management tool, for example. And any special notes that you might have on tone or special spellings, or reminders about key messages that you're trying to communicate, all of those things can go in that cheat sheet that you have. You can even print it out and just tape it to your wall as a reminder if that's helpful for you, whatever works for you. So as I mentioned, Canva really helps with this. It's very templated. And the nice thing is when you develop a design in Canva that works for you, it's very, very simple to swap out the image, swap out the text, swap out the colors so that you can keep that consistent format and just very easily switch it up. Another tool that many people like using is Trello. There's a free plan and there's also an affordable pro plan. And that's just another way that you can keep track of, what's in progress, what's kind of in your idea bank, what's coming up, and move things kind of through the queue when you're doing more long-term content planning. I think the main thing is to come up with a system that allows you to spend a little bit of time upfront planning in advance so that you're not scrambling later and wondering what you're going to post today. So we talked a little bit about social media management tools already and some of the benefits, and that was just kind of recapped on this slide. So I'm just going to skip past that one. So before I go in to talk about the ROI on social media, I just want to take another pause and just give everybody a chance. Did anybody have any questions or anything that they wanted to share about that previous section? Okay. Good, you guys are with me. I hope that the PowerPointiness is is okay for you guys. So so the question that a lot of people have is like, how do I even know if I'm getting any return on investment from social media? I'm spending all this time creating content. I'm getting likes and shares and reach, but what does that even mean anyway? And the secret to ROI on social media is beginning with the end in mind. So if you know where you want to go, work backwards to create content that's going to, to get you there. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that here. So before we do, I guess I'd like to get a little bit of a sense from you. How do you currently measure success on social? You can type in the chat or you can, unmute yourself, whatever you feel comfortable. But I'd really love to know, what are you currently using to tell if you're being successful? You can type a 1 if you're like, I have no idea. Okay, more messaging, outreach and ticket sales. Yeah, so those are valid things, especially the ticket sales. It's a nice concrete thing for sure. And yes, tracking your sales numbers. Yeah, it's really common, to have a bit of a lack of clarity about, what it is that you're tracking or how to know if you're doing well on social. Even within the insights, like you're right, and there's quite a lot of data there. Sometimes the problem is there's too much, so you see that like this number's doing this number's doing that, but how do you know if that's even good, right? So as I mentioned, Inga is going to be speaking about this a little bit more in the next presentation. But I just wanted to touch on a couple of the ways that you can do this here. So one thing you can do is plan your content with your return on investment in mind. So, how many tickets do you need to sell, or how much money do you need to raise? And start with that to figure out, well, what are the steps to get people there? What is the journey that my customer needs to take from becoming aware that I have a show to begin with, to becoming interested in the show, to feeling ready, like maybe I want to attend it, to actually like pressing the buy button? And develop content that speaks to each of those phases, and time your content so that you have enough time from that first teaser that lets people know the show is happening to the moment when they can buy tickets, so that you've created that excitement and you've nurtured those people to be ready to buy when the time comes. You want to think about when you want people to take action. Like I said, that impacts when you plan to schedule your content. You also want to think about who your audience is, and part of that is, where are they on social media? Are you speaking to your current audience? Are you speaking to new audiences and trying to reach out to them? And taking a moment to kind of brainstorm some answers to things like, well, what are the triggers that leads people to buy? What blocks them from buying? And for buying, it can be taking whatever action is a meaningful action to you. What information do they need in order to feel confident to take whatever action it is that you want them to take? So again, in the context of let's say buying tickets to a musical performance, you know, maybe you know that one of the things that triggers the audience to buy is that they're already a fan of that artist, right? So maybe you think about ways that you can cross promote with the artist's page, or maybe you run ads that that look for people who are fans of that genre of music or of that performer. Maybe you're sharing kind of teasers early on, and you know that there's an existing fan base for this artist, and you're speaking to them in that voice, like, it's so exciting, this person's coming back, we know you loved them last time. Or maybe the person is unknown in your community and you've got to figure out how to get people interested. And so maybe you're thinking, well, I've got to give them a taste of the music, right? So in that case, maybe what you're going to do is share some video clips, or you're going to share some reviews of that person's latest album, or you're going to have some compelling photos, you know, things like this that kind of give a bit of that taste, so that it primes them, so that when you do finally share, here's the link to go buy tickets or sign up to come join this show, then they can make that decision, and they're ready to make that decision. And of course, you're going to measure how many people saw that post versus how many clicked through. So that those choices, defining what it is that's important to your business, should inform the creation of your content calendar. And you're going to want to think about it in terms of an annual planning cycle, quarterly, monthly, and weekly. And this doesn't have to be that overwhelming. Really, all it is thinking ahead. You know, if you have regularly recurring events or seasons that you know are important seasons for you, mark them down on the calendar and make a bit of a work back. Go, I know we've got a big fundraiser in September, and I want to start promoting that fundraiser in July, maybe to get participants to offer, I don't know, silent auction gifts. And in August, I'm going to start drumming up excitement for the performers at this event. You know, and then in September, we're going to push really hard. We're going to have interviews with the people who are coming. We're going to be talking about our story and why it's so important. We're going to be sharing the results our organization gives. And that gives you your quite a lot to go on in terms of what kind of content to create, and, you know, and what messages you want to share. So then you plot that into your quarterly plans. So, you know, you kind of drill down, you've got your roadmap then for your year. What are the most important things that you know you're going to have to, that you know are coming up as an organization? But on a quarter by quarter basis, of course, things shift a little bit, right? You might not know exactly who, like what your programming is. For example, on a yearly basis, you might know it on a quarterly basis, or maybe for you, that cycle might happen on a monthly basis. Whatever it is, at that point, you can start to drill down into more specific content planning. You know, you can be identifying key messages. You can be allocating funds or resources, or assigning people to actually create that content, so that you have it in the bank. It's ready to go because you know it's coming up. Coming into the monthly, weekly cycle, depending on how much of a long-term planner you are, you can start actually scheduling that produced content in so that it's all ready to go. When you follow that kind of a planning process, where you're periodically revisiting, you know, what is really important to my organization to talk about, what are the things that I really need to track, what is the action I need my audience to take, you know, what are the assets I need to create, and you slot those all in the calendar. Then on a weekly basis and on a daily basis, when you're updating social media, you'll find that a lot of the content has already been decided. It's already been created. You have a bank of these assets. You know what you're going to say. You know what's important to speak about at this time. So you don't have that feeling of constantly scrambling to try to catch up all the time. Does that make sense to you guys? Is that clear? Type a 1 in the chat if that's clear, and type a 2 if you've got questions. Okay, great. I hope that thinking about that is helpful for you. I know for me it is, because it gives a little bit more direction to the content you're creating, and it really helps to focus, so you know what matters to communicate. You're not just you know, trying to fill space. So to kind of recap, and then we can get into a little bit of open discussion here until we're at the end of our time. You know, to create engaging content, you want to remember that there are those 3 C's. It's not up to you to create absolutely everything. You know, think about what you can create for sure, but think about what you can curate. Think about what conversations you can host. Leverage your strengths and improve your skills. And again, don't try to do everything all at once. Focus on one thing you want to improve and on one thing that you're really good at. And then as those things become second nature and you feel like you've got good momentum, you can start adding other things to your toolkit. And don't be afraid to experiment. That's how you're going to learn. The more content that you create and put out there, the more things that you try, the more data you're going to get back from your audience. You know, one thing I didn't really talk about in this presentation was about how frequently to post to different platforms. And there was a comment that I had heard from somebody, and unfortunately I can't remember who said it, but I thought it was a really good comment that, you know, there is no perfect frequency. It really depends on your relationship with your audience and how much compelling content you actually have to share. But one thing that's for sure, the more that you share and the more you participate on social media, the better you're going to understand what works. And so you're going to develop more skill and more confidence as well. So post as often as you can. You know, obviously there is such a thing as oversharing, but I think we also kind of know what that feels like. If you put yourself in your audience's shoes, you know, and you think about how you prefer to interact with brands, you know, don't post 30 times a day, but maybe post once a day if you're able to. And if you can't, don't beat yourself up. Make yourself a schedule, commit to posting once a week, you know, twice a week, whatever is actually manageable to you, because you do want to try to be consistent about it. So streamlining your content process will help with that consistency, because you can, you know, dedicate time to create a whole bunch of content and generate a whole bunch of ideas that you can keep on file for those days when, you know, the well runs dry. Using some style guides and templates also really helps because it makes it fast to create new things and to remix content. And remember, for any one thing you create, you can probably reuse it in a bunch of different ways. So, you know, sit down with your team periodically as you're, you know, or with your volunteers, with somebody you can bounce ideas off of, you know, and see what you can come up with. How else could you tell this story? How else could you use these assets that you have? And the secret to return on investment in social media is to be purposeful when you're planning your content and to measure the things that actually map to your goals and objectives. And as I mentioned, Inga's going to get into much more detail on that front coming up. But just in big picture, just that idea alone, being really clear about what it is that you're trying to get out of social media, what actions you want your audience to take, what messages are important to communicate, what things are important to your organization, and then everything flows from that. That was the end of my program slides here, but I think we have a couple of minutes to just have a little bit of a more free-flowing chat. I'm curious, you know, did anybody have questions that I didn't answer in the presentation, or was there anything that was unclear for you? It's very quiet. And is there anything that you heard today that you think you can take away and use? Maybe type a 1 in the chat if there was something that you know you can take away and bring back. Oh, actually, there was a bunch of 1s, so type a 2. Okay, Irma, you've got a 1 with an exclamation point. Do you mind unmuting and sharing what you're going to take away?
Yes. Well, unfortunately, I couldn't follow the whole presentation. I was supposed to have someone here watching the gallery and welcoming visitors, and that didn't happen. So of course, as soon as we started, someone showed up, and then people kept coming in. But just a little bit I got at the end. I already had 1 or 2 things that I wrote down, and that was like, okay, that's something that's going to be really helpful. So and then I'll just go through the presentation later, and I'm sure there's going to be more things
That's great.
that will be very useful. Yeah. So thank you.
Do you mind sharing what you wrote down? I'm just curious, you know, for me as well, you know, about which things kind of resonated the most.
So the social media manager, like I heard about Hootsuite, never really checked it out, just kind of always running behind, trying to catch up. Never really looked into the whole thing, and then I realized that, you know, you can go back and check the notifications and like from all different platforms, which would help me save a lot of time. And the whole planning is just something I really need to get on. Yeah, that's going to be really helpful, I'm sure. And then I didn't realize it was nonprofit version for Canva. So that's something I jumped on right away, because I was actually looking into getting Canva Pro, since I've been using it more and more. Just two things I can think of right now.
Yeah, that's a very good point about the Canva Pro thing too, for sure. It's such a useful tool, and you know, and it's it can be used for making videos as well as making shareable images, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely worth doing. And for anybody, does the thought of doing that advanced planning sound a bit intimidating? You can type a 3 in the chat if you're kind of like, oh, that sounds a bit scary, or type a 1 if it actually helps you feel more in control. Okay, good. Yeah, because you know, it's really important that you know, you don't try to do everything all at once. Like wherever you're at is where you're at, and if you can just do one thing and move kind of in the direction that you want to go, that's really the best way. And just little by little, baby steps, you know. So if right now, you know, and it's really common, if you're like this, you're not alone, where I think for a lot of people who are in charge of social media, it's like, oh crap, I haven't updated Facebook in a while. You know, what should I put up there? I don't know what I'm saying. Or it ends up being very repetitive, you know, like you'll remember to put something up when you're promoting a show, but you might not remember to maybe show a bit of the behind the scenes, or to do some teasers and create enough of a lead up to that big event. So yeah, and Erin, yeah, but I just need to do it. It's true. It's just setting that time, sitting down, and you know, and doing a bit of that brainstorming, capturing some of that stuff, you know, getting a little bit organized, and then it does become a lot easier. And Beth, you made the comment, it's a reminder to nurture your relationship with patrons on Facebook. Yeah, it's true. You know, and you've probably felt this as well from pages that you follow, when it's just a constant stream of, you know, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. It's not that engaging. It's nice to feel like you get some kind of special secret information, or you get some special insights, or you know, you get to see things maybe from a different perspective, or you get to learn about new artists that are similar to artists that you followed before. You know, getting a bit of that sense of discovery and connection, I think is what a lot of people look for, and it's part of what makes that content really engaging for them. Okay, great. And then Brenda asked about a quick poll about website builders, providers. So, I mean, I think a lot of people probably use WordPress, but to help Brenda out, would you guys mind just typing in the chat what website builder or provider you use, or what platform you use, and if you'd recommend it? Because yeah, there's a lot of choices these days, and you know, some of them are a little bit easier than others to use and have their benefits. Yeah, WordPress. Yes, Erin, I totally agree. Get a developer to do it for you. It is, you know, WordPress, you know, you can learn the ins and outs of it and everything, but you start getting into the custom development, and it can be such a time sink if you try to do it all yourself. Yeah, and yes, it's easy to maintain once you've started it. Okay, and Irma, you've used Wix as well?
I haven't really used it much, but I've helped our Nature Park Society within getting a website or a new website, and it was based on Wix. So I have seen how it works, and I find it very similar to WordPress. I'm using on a daily basis. So, and I think it's very intuitive and easy to use.
There's one thing related to the website that is kind of adjacent to our conversation today, which is making sure that your website promotes the social channels that you are actively updating. You know, when I was going through the list of websites for the member directory, I found some made it really easy to find the social channels. You know, it was right there when you first come to the website in a place where you could easily find it. But a lot of places I found really de-emphasized it. You know, it's at the footer of the page, and some places, like some websites, didn't have it at all on there. So, you know, if you are investing your time in social media and if you are updating it, it's a good idea to make sure that your website connects to your social media, and your social media also feeds back to your website. Make sure that you're connecting all those dots together. There are even some plugins that you can use if you're, so what I find is that depending on the web platform you use and how easy it is to update, some organizations end up getting into a habit of putting all the news on social media and actually not updating their website very often. You know, and if that's your habit, it might be worth speaking to your developer about a way to maybe bring some of your social media content onto your website, or coming up with a workflow that streamlines it so that you can make sure that you know, your website isn't being neglected in favor of social media. It's just so easy to update, you know, Instagram or Facebook, and sometimes it's a few more steps to update the website, but it is important to make sure that the information is everywhere. It's one thing on your website, you know, first of all, you're going to get the search engine value, but also things stay in the same place so they can be found again. You know, when it's just posted in the stream, it just kind of, you know, goes through Facebook. And I don't know about you, but I've certainly had it where I saw something come through in my feed on Facebook and it looked interesting, and then I could not find that post again. You know, it gets kind of buried, especially if it's if you have a very active feed. So it's just a reminder as well to make sure that you make it easy for people to find the things that you're sharing.
Brianna, I thought you could save your posts. Like, I think I save a lot on Facebook, so later to share.
Yeah, I do share posts, but sometimes I forget, or sometimes I actually have a lot of shared posts, and sometimes I forget where I shared it too.
Right. I know, it's a lot of content to sift through.
Yeah. Well, and you know, it kind of goes back to that conversation of like that relationship between social media and the other marketing touch points, right? Because social media makes it so easy to update and, you know, to share news, sometimes organizations don't have a website at all. They only have social media. And, you know, one of the dangers with that is that you're not entirely in control of, you know, what happens with the algorithms, or even what happens with the platform itself, you know. So if everything you have is only on Facebook, let's say, and then Facebook could decide tomorrow that they're no longer going to support business pages. I don't think they will, because they make a lot of money on the advertising that businesses spend on it, but they could, and you can do nothing about it. And so if you make sure that you also have your own web presence, and that you're also paying attention to search engine optimization and that side of things, then that helps you know, mitigate that risk. And likewise for your email list, you know, just because people are looking for information on social media doesn't mean that you shouldn't also be sharing information by email. It's another thing that I hear a lot of people kind of question, like, does it even make sense to have an email list anymore? And yes, the answer is yes. You know, and part of the reason is, again, control. Once you've got those emails, you've got that direct line to your customer, and you know, so that makes you less vulnerable to things like algorithm changes in your ability to be able to reach the people who have opted into messaging from you. Any other comments or questions, or things that you wanted to share about your own experience?
Everybody's so quiet today.
Yes, everybody's so quiet today. Did my PowerPoint put you to sleep?
This close to a long weekend. We're
Yeah.
this close to a long weekend.
Colleen, you raised your hand?
This has been amazing. I now know how little I know. So it's been quite an experience for me. And I realize I've got to find somebody to take over my role. Something about something. It's been really entertaining and interesting. And I'm going to look for Canva Pro. And I'm going to persevere and keep trying things.
I'm glad to hear that. You know, like I said, you don't have to feel like you've got to compete with anybody else. You know, you don't have to be like anybody else. That's actually one of the really beautiful things is because it's all about the relationship that you have with your audience. If you just keep your focus on that, it doesn't really matter how you do it. You could be using a listserv, you know, if that's how it works for your audience, then that's fine. You know, social media definitely has lots of benefits. It's got lots of opportunity, but you don't have to try and, you know, seize all the opportunities. You know, just pick something that feels manageable, that you can sustain over the long term, that you have the resources and knowledge to do. Justine has got a question about how many presenters here are on LinkedIn. Do you just want to quickly drop one in the chat if you are on LinkedIn? Okay, so we've got a few. Yeah, LinkedIn is another interesting one. That's it's another platform that some people find a lot of value in, and other people not so much. And I think, like most things social media, it really reflects the time that you spend there connecting with other people or not. You know, if you post your resume there or your business page, but then never update it and never make any effort to connect with others on that platform, then you're probably not going to get as much out of it as somebody who's, you know, actively working their network. Is there anybody here that is winning at LinkedIn who wants to pipe up and maybe share what's working for you? No, not so much. I am curious. And when you think about your organization's social media, and you think about, you know, everything that we've spoken about, and you know, reflecting on the engagement you have with your audience, I'm curious to know which platform you find is the most effective for connecting with your audience, and that you feel delivers the best value for your organization. So type of 1 if it's Facebook, 2 if it's Instagram, and let's say 3 if it's Twitter. And if it's something else, just type the name of it in the chat. Okay, so a lot of Facebook. Yeah, I'm not really so surprised to see that. I mean, Facebook is such the juggernaut, you know. There's almost everybody is there these days, and there's so many you know, great tools in their advertising platform as well, if you're using those to be able to reach your audiences. That it really is a powerful tool. But I think it's interesting, you know, as people's preferences are evolving, I am seeing certain kind of demographics and certain people fall away a bit from Facebook, you know, and coming up more into Instagram. And yes, and Erin, you're right. It also relates to that younger audience, understanding that theater is cool. And much like that example from TikTok that I showed with from the Philharmonic, there's an opportunity on Instagram and on TikTok to show a side of, you know, your venue, your art, you know, of what you do, that is less formal, that is more playful, that is a little bit like more representative of the spirit and the feeling of what's happening in the venue. And that can be a great way to attract people who might have thought they wouldn't like theater, but then they see like how fun it is, or you know, how interesting things are that are going on, and you know, might make them tune in a little more. Eileen, you're curious if presenters use social media to research artists. That's a really great question. And so why don't you, let's put that out to everybody too. If you do use social media to research artists, could you type a 3 in the chat? And if you do not use social media to research artists ever, could you put a 1 in the chat? Okay, so we've got some 3s. Marika, am I saying that right, or is it Marika?
Marika, yeah, you said it.
Marika. Do you want to share a little bit about what you're looking for when you look up an artist on social media?
Well, more, it's look like, because I'm interested in a lot of arts and any arts platform, even a musician or anything. So it's coming to my feed. So I usually click, review it, and then save it for future references when I'm looking for someone or hire or organizing festival or anything like that. So I have different like artists, visual artists, then I have musicians, then I have children stories, all those different area, and I save it links. So usually now I'm just use my notes and I save the link on the name of the artist, or when I go to the website through the platform, through the Facebook, and then just save the link for the future so I can hire them when I need them.
Very good. And Erin, you mentioned that you also use it when people request to book the theater. Do you maybe want to share if there are things that make you, that you especially like to see or that have impressed you that you've seen the artists do, or things that have been a bit of a turnoff?
Honestly, more than anything, is to see how much of an effort that I put in to trying to engage them to the next level. So frequently they're trying to book our theater, not quite understanding that we're a 1,260 seat theater, so we're not small. We're perhaps not a great choice for an intimate guitarist who's going to get only 50 people as an audience. So it gives me an idea to take a look at who they are as to how I respond. So I can push them towards the Ample Center, which is down the hill. I can push them towards other suggestions and then start the conversation that way. So it gives me an idea of who they are, if it's a name that I don't recognize immediately, or they're not, if it's someone that's coming to me through, say, a booking agency, I know that they're going to understand. But if it's the artist themselves reaching out, it gives me an opportunity to just get a little bit more information about them.
Right. And so are you looking at the number of followers, or the type of content, or is it more like the
number of followers, the type of content? Frequently they'll put, artists don't seem to have their own websites, or if they do, they don't maintain them. So at least on social media, they're showcasing a little bit more of themselves, maybe gives an idea of their concert. Again, if they're a single artist, if they're a single guitar player, they shouldn't be on our stage. It's just, it's not going to be a pleasant experience for them. If I can give them an idea of a better place for them to go, a better place for them to perform, then that's great.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, about finding that right fit. And I think it raises one of the issues. Do we have anyone who is an artist here on the call? If you are, would you type a 1 in the chat? I'm just curious. Okay, so Justine and Jocelyn. That's great. I think one thing that I've observed from many artists is that most of them don't share as much as they could. There seems to be a lot of, kind of reticence to promote themselves. And then I think in some cases don't necessarily know how. And your point, Erin, about, artists not having a website and, not making that clear, and the fact that like the not having a follower count, not having a presence online kind of makes you wonder if they can fill the theater, is a really good point, I think, for artists to take away, that like, yeah, that actually does matter. It is an important calling card. And Justine, you had asked, what are they researching? Just followers, or so. Let me see, Cheryl. Maybe would you share a few comments about, what you're looking for when you look at artist profiles? You mentioned that you use it when you're researching artists who are included in a funding application. What are the kinds of things you're looking for, and what are some kind of maybe red flags or signs that maybe this isn't going to be a great fit?
When I'm giving a charge to the jury who would be looking at your funding application, a little bit more information than sometimes is included. So things like your videos, if there's other information that is on your Facebook that we can't find on your website, often one is updated and the other one's not. So what's more current, and then just whatever you've got on there in terms of your content that we can actually give to the jury so they get a bit more of a rounded picture of who you are. And sometimes with emerging artists, there's not a lot of information on the web, so that page is really the source of information if you're new and starting out in your career. And it is used a lot, like when a jury goes to, if they're charged with it, they will search you out anyway. So they will do their own Google search and find you, and regardless of whether we send them there or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really useful to know. And I realize we're at the end of our time here, so I know a few people are leaving as well. But Cheryl, I'm wondering if you can just share, how important is it for you to see video and like high quality photos of an artist on their social media?
Well, I think it is important once you get to a certain stage, and certainly we're not looking for the, really expensive, slickly produced videos or photos, but the better you can make things look. And we have done workshops to help artists improve their presence and, understand what a good image looks like. So if I'm a presenter, how am I going to sell your show is what really how we ask artists to look at things. So are you helping them sell the show? Do you have good images that they can use for posters and for their own social media? Are you active? Do you have your own fans that you can help promote the show? Those kinds of things is what we talk about in our own workshops. So it is important for you to have that social media presence and to have that good quality content there. It doesn't have to cost a lot either, as you say, Brianna.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Cheryl. It's really good information. So I think we're at the end of our time here. So Cheryl, do you have any, wrap up comments or anything that you want to make, or Joanna?
Joanna's had to go off to another meeting, so okay. I'll just say that we have recorded this, and I'll send out the recording to everybody. I don't know if you're all signed up for next week, but if you're not signed up for next week, I'm just going to put the link in the chat. And the next week's session is going to be about your metrics, how you evaluate the impact of what you're doing. And Inga will be leading that session, so we'll invite Inga back for that. But otherwise, just to say thank you to everybody for coming, and thank you, Brianna.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and it's so great to meet everybody and and get to hear a little bit about what's happening back in BC.
Well, have a great
Thanks, everybody.
day.